Tee. Welcome to the 2019 NFL Draft Wrap-Up Series where your man Louie Tee aims to break down all 32 teams in the National Football League's 2019 NFL Draft using our baseball grading scale, single, double, triple home run. There are no strikeouts here in the Draft Wrap-Up Series. You cannot tell how these players are going to pan out, and I don't want to discount any of these young men before they get their chance in the National Football League. And so we'll get a score for each and every single player selected in X said team's draft. We'll apply bonuses when necessary, get an aggregate score, divide by the number of picks, which will yield us an overall grade for that team's draft. We'll then move on to the next team in the series picked by you. That's right, you, the viewer, are in total control as this is the You Pick format. Simply be the first to leave a comment in the comment section of this and future videos in this series stating two things: the phrase next and the team you'd like to see next. Some examples would be Jets next, NYJ next, New York Jets next, JETS, Jets next. You get where I'm going with this. As a matter of fact, the next team up in this series is none other than the JETS, Jets. Now, it's been a JETS mess, as I've talked about on my podcast, with the situation that has unfolded with their ex-general manager, Mike McCagnon, and all the things that have transpired with their new head coach. Look, I've already said it numerous times. I'm not a huge fan of their new head coach, and I wasn't a fan of his when he was in Miami. I don't know why they thought it was a good idea to bring him to New York. You got to see him up close and personal in Miami. Now, yes, he did win enough games to qualify for the playoffs. What was that, 2-3 years ago in Miami? It was very early on in his tenure there, but I am not an Adam Gase fan, period. End of discussion. I don't think he's a leader of men. I think in order to be a successful head coach, you have to be first and foremost. Look, everyone knows X's and O's at this point when you get to this level, as I've mentioned numerous times. Some know it a little bit better than others, but there isn't a big enough differential there to separate those from the other. What gets you to the next level, to me, at this level, with these players is you got to be a people person. You got to be a leader of men. They got to follow you to the depths of despair all the way to the highest of the highs. Like that, you have to have guys that are willing to run through a wall for you, and I just don't get that sense with Adam Gase. He's already alienated two of your bigger free agent pickups in this offseason in Le'Veon Bell and C.J. Mosley by saying, look, I like those players. They're just not worth the money they're being paid. Well, that's a great way to forge a relationship with two of your highest paid and best players on your roster. That's a great way to get off on a great foot with those guys starting off this new relationship in New York. So, again, I don't love Adam Gase. I don't love the situation in New York, but this is a young football team that's starting to grow and develop. And they've got a quarterback that they think they have for the future and moving forward, and Sam Darnold. And they got Jamal Adams, and they think they have some building blocks. Williams along the defensive line. They think they've got all those pieces. You add L.A.B. Bell, you add C.J. Mosley, and you think you have the makings of the foundation for what could be a really good football team in New York. But it starts at the top of the organization, and it's a mess with ownership right now. Woody Johnson overdoing something in the UK. He's an ambassador over there. So they've got other ownership here that just seems to not know how to grab controls of this situation. And so it's spiraled out of control, and it's trickling down to the coaching staff, down to the field. And eventually you're going to see the product, I think, unravel with Adam Gase as the team's head coach. But look, that's nor here nor there. I don't want to kill your joy right now. You're in the offseason. Everyone feels like they're a winner right now. So let's talk about this draft. It's amazing because the guy that actually made the selections, he's not here. So I don't even know how to feel about this draft. If I were a Jets fan, I wouldn't know how to feel about the draft in particular, because the next GM that's coming in, he didn't pick these players. And we all know how it goes with general managers and players that they didn't select. It can get really ugly really fast when they have a guy in there that they can't stand and they look at him and say, I didn't bring him here. Let's get him out of here. So you could see total overhaul over the next 2 years if you bring a general manager in here that feels like these guys don't fit my vision for what I think the Jets are going to be in 5 years. So we need to move on from these guys and start anew. You get tired of rebuilding and retrying to make your organization and trying to reshape and mold it into what someone else views it as. At some point, you take the pieces you have and you try to make them work. And we'll see if the Jets are at a point now where they have enough pieces to potentially compete for something. AFC East, wild card, something of note. They haven't been good enough to do that, it seems like, in quite some time. Maybe, 2-3 years ago with Ryan Fitzpatrick when they went 10-6 and missed the postseason with Todd Bowles as the head coach. We'll see what they are able to do in New York, but with this Jets football team. But as I mentioned, Mike McCagnon made these selections in this draft. He's no longer here, so it's amazing that the guy that made these selections just a month and a half later isn't here to talk about them. But here we are. So let's look at these picks though, because I actually think he left you a nice couple of gifts on his way out the door. Let's talk about this Jets draft and what these players could potentially be for the Jets moving forward, and what kind of role they can play for the New York Jets as we start this draft off with what I thought was the best player in all of this 2019 NFL draft. Defensive lineman out of defensive lineman out of Alabama. Quinnen Williams is the third pick overall to the Jets to get their draft underway. So we've seen a number of defensive linemen come out of Alabama's program over the last 5 years or so, 7 years. I mean, going all the way back to Marcel Darius. I think he was the first of a long line of these guys to just kind of trickle through that program under Nick Saban and company. You've got Darius. You've got Jaron Reed, Ashawn Robinson, Jonathan Allen, Daron Payne. The list goes on and on. I might have left out one or two guys in there, but to me, he supersedes all of those guys. There's more talent here than with any of the names that I just threw out, including any ones that I may have missed. This guy is a superior talent and was arguably the best player in college football last year. But again, he plays along the defensive line, so it's easy to be overshadowed by, say, a quarterback or a running back or someone who touches the football very often. It's much easier to see what those guys are doing, and it's much easier because it's tangible. You get to see those numbers, but you can't really feel the impact unless a guy is out there putting up numbers. But if you're watching the game, you see what Quinnen Williams is and what he brings to the table and what he does to an opponent and what he does to a football game. He wrecks shop, and I watch this guy do it on a consistent basis. I'm not going to break him down here. I've already done that on the Draft Prospects 101 series on the Louie Tee Network. So if you're looking for a thorough breakdown of Quinnen Williams and all the other draft prospects I was able to get to prior to the draft, just go to the Louie Tee Network, which you're already here if you're watching this video, and check out the 2019 NFL Draft Prospects 101 series. It's a film breakdown of all of those players that I was able to get to, including Quinnen Williams. And I think this guy was the best player in college football. He was my number one guy in this particular draft. And I don't generally do a big board or anything of that nature, but he was clearly, to me, of all the prospects I watched, the best player in college football. And I think he's a guy that can change the fortunes of a franchise. And I honestly didn't think you needed another defensive lineman. I thought you were already pretty much set along the defensive line. You had Williams already, another Williams. So I guess you'll have Williams and Williams wrecking shop along that defensive line now. But you already had Williams. You just drafted Nathan Shepard last year. You still had Steve McClendon on the defensive line. Henry Anderson has been a solid acquisition for you. Hell, you even had Folorunso Fatukasi, a guy that's a developmental project down there along the defensive line. I just felt like you had enough stuff already on the defensive line that you didn't really need to add. But this kind of value, you can't pass up. Now, there was a debate as to whether it should have been Williams or Josh Allen at 3 because you needed edge rushing help so much. I think you took the right player. Again, I know it's hard to find edge rushing. I shouldn't have to tell you. You know just how hard it can be to find quality edge rushers in this league. Go see, what's his name? Vernon, what's the Ohio State guy? I hate bringing up those kind of nasty names, but what's his name? Vernon, something. You know who the hell I'm talking about, man. Damn, he was funky, boy. I don't even know if he had a sack in his career. Man, was that a big bust or what? Anyway, you know how hard it can be to find edge rushers. You know. So I don't have to tell you. You already know. But the kind of pressure that he can apply from the interior position along with the other Williams, and now you look at what you're starting to put around this defense with C.J. Mosley, Avery Williamson, and all those guys. And then in the back half, obviously I talked about Jamal Adams and him being a building block. And I don't know what Marcus May is doing for you, but You look around, you're hoping Tremaine Johnson is much better in year two of being a Jet than he was in year one. And I think when you get more pressure on the quarterback, it will help a guy like Tremaine Johnson. Now, remember, when he came from Los Angeles with the Rams, they were getting pressure on the quarterback. It made his job a lot easier. You get pressure on the quarterback, which you drafted some guys in this draft that are going to help you do that. Maybe it makes Tremaine Johnson look like the Tremaine Johnson of old and not the guy that you saw getting beat quite often last season. But that's nor here nor there. Bottom line is, Quinnen Williams was the best value at 3. And when you're picking in the top 10 of the draft, yes, you would like to get a guy that fits a need. That's always the goal. But at the same token, you're in a position picking in the top 10 because you're not a very good team, which means you need to be drafting the best player available. Now, obviously, there are certain positions where you just don't take another player at that position because it doesn't make any sense. Left tackle, quarterback. If you already have one entrenched that isn't going anywhere anytime soon, then that doesn't make any sense for you. But if you're talking defensive line, if you're talking edge rusher, if you're talking wide receiver, if you're talking about one of those types of positions, you can never have too many of those guys. And so, to me, this was a no-brainer here at number 3. You did the right thing. You shouldn't have taken Josh Allen. This was the right pick. And you just add as much defensive talent as you can. You find places to put guys on the field. If you've got an abundance of defensive talent, you'll find ways to get them on the field if they're talented enough. And so this is a guy that I feel like you plug him in, you put him next to Williams and all those other guys, Nathan Shepard along the defensive line, and you watch these guys work, and they'll create pressure for you, and they'll make it better when you finally find an edge rusher that can get to the quarterback. They will make it so much easier for that guy to hit home because you can't double a guy off the edge when you've got Williams over here, Shepard over there, and it's so much harder. Henry Anderson over here. It's so much harder when you got all these different guys that you got to keep an eye on. You can't double team everybody. Someone's going to get free. And if you give Quinnen Williams a one-on-one matchup, a lot of times he's going to win. And so I love this acquisition for the Jets here. 3rd overall selection. Defensive lineman out of Alabama, Quinnen Williams. Of course, you already know what this is.
Hits it high. Hits it deep. It is out of here.
So my comp for Quinnen Williams, for those of you who haven't watched his video on my YouTube channel, it's Fletcher Cox, man. I see this guy being a disruptive force of the highest order in this league. And to me, it's Aaron Donald, 1, and then the next closest defensive lineman in the league to him interior-wise is Fletcher Cox. There may be a little bit of a gap there because Aaron Donald is so dominant, but Fletcher Cox is the next guy. And then I think there's another little gap between him and the next best defensive lineman. That may be Geno Atkins still getting it done in Cincinnati. That may be Calais Campbell in Jacksonville. But to me, it's 1 with Donald, a little gap. 2 with Fletcher Cox, another gap. And then I think the gap between 2 and 3 is bigger than the gap between 1 and 2. That's how dominant this guy, Quinnen Williams, could potentially be. I think he's in that class potentially with a guy like Fletcher Cox. So we go to the 3rd round. Jets did not have a 2nd round pick. 68th overall. Edge rusher out of Florida, Jachai Polite, is the selection. So, no 2nd rounder due to the trade last year that allowed you to move up to snag Sam Darnold. And so you surrendered 2 2nd rounders, 1 last year, 1 this year, to the Indianapolis Colts. So we go to the 3rd round, and here's a guy that early on in the process of this draft, he was talked about as a 1st round pick in Jachai Polite. I mean, you look at the production at Florida, you look at the explosion when you watch him on tape, and you see 1st round talent. I know I did. But you start factoring in some of the issues. The combine was a big disappointment for him. He doubled down on that disappointment at his pro day, did not fare well there either. I love the fact that he was self-aware of the situation and made mention of the fact that, yeah, it was a learning experience. I really, really turned some people off to me, and I've got to be better. And it was an eye-opening experience, and I learned from it. That's good to hear, but he didn't perform any better at his pro day. That being said, if you are comfortable with what you saw on tape and you're comfortable with the young man in question, then this is great value here in the 3rd round. There's no way else to say it. This is tremendous value here. Now, there are questions that have to be answered, and there are things that need to be solidified with him. But if you're comfortable with the individual here in Jachai Polite, then this is a no-brainer in terms of value here in the third round. Again, we're talking about first-round talent you're getting here in the third round. You should feel very excited about getting your hands on a big position of need. To me, as you can see, edge rusher is the biggest need you have. As a matter of fact, let's go through these needs quickly for the Jets. Edge rusher, I don't have to say it. You don't have a guy on your roster right now that can get to the quarterback consistently coming off the edge. All right, that's really the end-all be-all. There's nothing else to add to that discussion. You don't and haven't had for quite some time anyone that threatens the opposition off the edge. Simple as that. So you needed that. You got it here. Let's take that off the board now because you just got it here in Ja'Kai Polite. So that feels good. Offensive line wasn't good enough last year. Simple as that. Nothing else to really say. Nothing else to talk about. Let's move on. You need to be better. And if you're going to have Sam Darnold turn into the quarterback that you think he can become, if you're going to have L.Bell run rampant and roughshod over the league, you need to have better play up front. And so you need to address the offensive line. Cornerback, Trumaine Johnson is number one. And he didn't play like a one last year at times. But you're assuming that he's going to bounce back in year number 2 of a Jet being a Jet. And so you still need somebody opposite of him. And look, I don't know if Darryl Roberts is that guy. I was a huge Perry Nickerson guy when you drafted him out of Tulane last year. I still haven't given up on Perry Nickerson. We'll see what happens with him. You got you a nice nickel, Brian Poole from the Atlanta Falcons in free agency. I love, and you lost a nickel last year in a Buster Screen. He's since moved on. So you needed to replace it, and you got a really good football player in Brian Poole. I really like him. So that's a nice addition, but you still need more depth, and you really need a starting corner if you don't believe in Darryl Roberts. And so cornerback is a need for me there as well. You look at wide receiver, to me, you just don't have enough. You just don't have enough. You got a bunch of stuff, but none of it is enough. I believe in Robbie Anderson. When his head is screwed on straight and Robbie's healthy, he's a big play threat in this league. I like Robbie Anderson a lot. Okay, you're hoping you're going to get Robbie Anderson of 2 years ago and not the one that last year was off the field issues, on the field issues. You're hoping to get Robbie Anderson of 2 years ago that was lighting the league up and almost had 1,000 yards or maybe had over 1,000 yards receiving. But that's no here nor there. You got Jameson Crowder in the offseason. That's going to help a ton. He's a guy that wins immediately in the slot, and that's what this league is all about, guys that can win immediately. He's going to do that for you, so that's a great acquisition. You also brought in Ty Montgomery, another little bit of a chess piece guy. You can move around backfield, wide receiver, that sort of thing. We'll see what he decides or what you decide he best fits in terms of roster flexibility, where he best suits this team. But also, you re-upped on a guy that is just extremely tough at the wide receiver position. Damn, I forgot his name, but tough as nails, wide receiver out of Nebraska, and has been really good for you when he's been healthy. Came back last year off of an injury, played well again, and so you decided to re-up on him. So you got a number of things, just some stuff at receiver, but none of it elite. I think you could use some big-time play at wide receiver, another boost at the receiver position. You didn't do that in this draft, but maybe you like the stuff you have. Maybe you like some guys that you added as free agents. We'll see what happens. I don't think you have enough at receiver, though, personally. Tight end, you have one guy that blew it up last year. Chris Herndon was outstanding out of Miami. Really, really good rookie season. You'd love to add another guy. If you're not going to have a great group at receiver, you know the way to offset that? To have some guys that tight end that you can get the football to. Makes your wide receiver group a lot more easier to stomach if they're not as good, if you have tight ends that can get it done. And so you can clean up some of your deficiencies at receiver by having a tight end group that steps up, and you did take care of that here in this draft. And then linebacker. Yep, you got C.J. Mosley. Yep, Avery Williamson is on the roster, and he's good. Even Jordan Jenkins is a guy that you may like a little bit, but I thought you could add more depth at the linebacker position. And so that's something that you also did do in this draft as well. So let's talk about Ja'Kai Polite, though. 6'3", 258 pounds, 33-inch arms. Here's a guy that we just don't know what his weight is going to be. He wanted to bulk up and prove to NFL scouts and evaluators that he can set the edge in the run game and that he's not undersized. That was one of his biggest mistakes. That's why he came to the combine overweight and out of shape. If he'd have just stayed at his playing weight, which is right around 240 pounds, he would have been just fine. No one was drafting him for what he does in the run game. Everyone was drafting him because he had 11 sacks last year and forced 6 fumbles and can get to the quarterback. That's why everyone wanted him, not because he was stopping the run in the run game. So that was his biggest mistake right there. But a dynamic edge rusher with some twitchiness that has a knack for getting to the quarterback. His nation-leading 6 forced fumbles is just one of the many ways he can impact the game. However, injuries off the field issues, accountability being the biggest issue that I've heard over and over again with this guy. Is he's not accountable for things that he does, whether on or off the field. His weight have all been hindrances to a talent that could be a great value for some team in the 2019 NFL draft. So this is a guy last year, when you watch him, at times he's unblockable. And his explosiveness off the snap is what you're looking for in an edge rusher in today's NFL. A guy that can win with his first 2 to 3 steps, beat that tackle, turn the corner, get to the quarterback, flatten that edge, and shorten that corner, get to the quarterback. And when you get there, get the football out. That's more important than just the sack itself. Getting the ball out, he made a living doing that. I love guys that even when they don't lay a finger on the quarterback, they're passing by, that tackle's trying to push him around the pocket, they swipe at the damn quarterback's arm and knock the ball out. I love that just as much as you pulverizing a quarterback and getting a kill shot. I want the rock. I want the rock more than anything else. And he understands that, and he gets to the football a lot. And so this is great value here in the third round, as I've mentioned already. Again, I don't know about the off-the-field things. I don't know about the accountability. I don't even know if this guy can figure out how to stay at 240 and not fluctuate weight-wise. But this is the thing. At one point, he was 230, 235 pounds. He got to 240. That was the money spot. That was the sweet spot. That's where he dominated in 2018. Then he goes up to 258 trying to impress people at the combine, runs a 4.8, 4.40, comes back at his pro day. I'm thinking, all right, he learned a lesson from the combine. It was a disaster. He's going to get into better shape. He's going to come back to his pro day at 245, 243. He's going to light it up, run a 4.66, which is what we thought he would run initially. And he ran a 5.04 at his pro day. So now you're thinking, what the hell is going on here with Jachai Polite? I don't know. And that's why this score isn't higher. But I can tell you this much. The dude has talent. And if I'm the Jets, I get him in my program and I say, look, you're not 250 anything pounds, all right? You're 245 pounds. You're 243. You're 240. We're fine with that, all right? We got guys that can stop the run. We got plenty of them, all right? Trust me. We know how to stop the run, all right? We need guys that can get to the quarterback. We need you at your best. Go ahead and get back down to 240. We'll handle everything else. So if you're the Jets, that's what you tell Jachai Polite. I think that's what they're going to do, is get him back into the best shape of his life and get him in a position where he can attack the quarterback, because that's what they need first and foremost out of Jachai Polite in the third round. 68th overall selection, edge rusher out of Florida. Jachai Polite, for me, is my comp for Jachai Polite is the ex-Missouri product that was drafted by the Denver Broncos, has since hit free agency and is now a Baltimore Raven, in Shane Ray. I see a lot of the same explosiveness that Shane Ray had coming out of Missouri that made him a first-round pick. We haven't seen a lot of that from Shane Ray since he got into the league, and he's had his own fair share of issues off the field, injuries and things of that nature, which is the same thing that Jachai Polite faces, injuries and a number of off-the-field issues and things that you have to concern yourself with, which could derail him like it's done with Shane Ray to this point of his career. You're hoping that he doesn't go down the same path that Shane Ray has with injuries, which is something you can't control, but also some of the off-the-field things Shane Ray has gotten himself into since getting into the league. You hope that Jachai Polite is able to steer clear of those things and focus on football, focus on getting his body and his mind right, and being the best and most productive football player that he can be for this Jets organization that already has more than enough dysfunction, doesn't need any more from young players. You go to their next pick here in the third round, 92nd pick overall. Offensive lineman out of USC, Chuma Udoga is the pick. So Chuma Udoga is a very intriguing offensive lineman. 6'3", 308 pounds, 35-inch arms. So it's rare that a guy his size gets an opportunity to play tackle, but when you got 35-inch arms, you pass the eye test initially. You don't have to be 6'7" to play tackle. That's not a requirement, although generally tackles are much larger, men in general. That's just how it is. You rarely see a 6'2" left tackle or right tackle. Generally, they're 6'4", 6'5", generally 6'5", 6'6", 6'7". But there are the rare exceptions, the 6'3" guys with long arms that you feel comfortable with. And as a matter of fact, let's talk about him. Chuma Udoga had 26 starts at USC, 2 at left tackle, 24 at right tackle in his career. You've got to be a unique individual to get an opportunity as a tackle at the NFL level at 6'3", but much like Georgia Bulldog turned New England Patriot Isaiah Wynn, Chuma Udoga is getting an opportunity to be a tackle in this league because he is quite unique. With 35-inch arms and foot quickness that is usually reserved for slot receivers, Udoga is a rarity that in that regard helps him out in pass pro and also his movements in the run game. His aloof demeanor on the field, coupled with his lack of core strength and injury history, he had wrist surgery in 2015, and he also had an ankle injury in 2017 that he missed some games for, makes Udoga more of a question mark than a sure thing. So let me tell you first and foremost what I think of this guy. I like the arm length. I like the movement skills. This guy and his ability to get out of the blocks. Man, this guy gets out of his stance like nobody's business. His foot quickness is off the charts. I'm watching his feet move, and it is a thing of beauty. In terms of guys beating him around the edge, that's just not happening with the way he moves his feet. Now, sometimes he can get out ahead of himself, and he'll open up the door inside because he's so quick out of his stance, but he mirrors guys no problems. Like, guys aren't beating him with foot quickness. You're just not going to do it with Chuma Udoga. It's just not going to happen. Now, here's the issue. He isn't the strongest guy. And I've seen him get jacked up, put on skates, and right into the lap of the quarterback. And I'm like, damn, didn't see that coming. Especially with 35-inch arms, you'd like to think that guys are able to keep people at bay with that kind of length at the tackle position. But at times, guys are able to get into his chest and really, really move him off of his spot. And you'd like to see him anchor a little bit better. But he gets movement in the run game. He easily gets to the second level. A lot of really good movement skills here from Udoga. But also, there are times, and this bothers me more than, because some of the other things you can clean up. Him anchoring and having problem with guys converting speed to power, you can coach that up because he can get stronger. He can get functionally stronger. He can use his punch better. There are things that he can do that will offset guys because his quickness is elite. My problem with him is he's got an aloof demeanor. There are times where he looks nonchalant on the football field, and you're like, bro, what the hell are you doing right now? So I'll give you an example. I'm watching him in a game versus Texas early in the season, and they throw a screen to his side, and he's just moseying along, almost like he's on an afternoon stroll through the park. And I'm like, bruh, where's your urgency? Go find somebody. Go block. He was literally one downshift from walking. That's how slow he was moving on this play. And two guys ended up getting to the back, one of which he could have picked up either one of those guys if he was moving with a sense of urgency. And I'm like, bro, what are you doing? And then there are times in the run game where I'm watching him, I'm like, you do know the ball's been snapped, right? Like, he's moving like it's pre-snap. And I'm like, this shit can't fly. Like, that bothers me because now I'm questioning your desire and your motor. And these are things that you can't be successful at the next level if I'm questioning your motor. Like, motor isn't something, again, give me the guy that isn't as talented, but he goes balls to the wall all the time. Give me 11 of those guys versus the guy that's uber talented, but I got to use a defibrillator to get him to play at a high level. Like, a wise man once told me, I'd much rather tame a wild man than revive a corpse. And I'm not saying that this guy's a corpse on the field, but at times he's operating as if he doesn't know that the ball's been snapped. I can't get with that. So he's got to overcome that. But if he's able to stay healthy with the athleticism and the length that this guy has, he could easily be a plug-and-play starter in this league for many years. But I've got some questions, not enough answers at this point. So here in the third round, let's go ahead, though, before we give you the score here. Let's take offensive line off the needs list as Chuma Udoga takes care of offensive line depth and help here. But in the third round, 92nd pick overall, offensive lineman out of USC, Chuma Udoga for me is my comp for Udoga is Kelvin Beachum, a guy that undersized offensive tackle coming out of SMU, didn't have a strong core, but was a really good athlete. Drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers, got an opportunity, took full advantage of it there, ended up parlaying that into a deal with the Jacksonville Jaguars, so forth and so forth. So I think he has some ability to play in this league, and I think he's going to get an opportunity with the Jets, and I'm hoping he takes full advantage of it, takes well to coaching, matures a little bit. There was a suspension in there where he missed a game for violating team rules, but I don't know what that is. That could have easily been missing curfew, so I don't really get wrapped up in that kind of stuff. Bottom line is he just needs to be better, and hopefully he takes the coaching and is better moving forward. We go to the 4th round, 121st pick overall. A tight end out of West Virginia, Trayvon Wesco is the pick. So here's a guy that I think started to really shoot up draft boards late in the process. I don't think this is a guy that was on many people's radars as this process got underway. And even as we got to the midpoint of the draft season, I don't think a lot of people were singing the praises of Trayvon Wesco. I don't think it was until late and people got into the other prospects because, everyone likes to fixate themselves on the early prospects. I'm guilty of it just as the next man is, of talking about the big names, the ones that everyone knows, the guys that are probably going to go in the first 2 rounds or so. But we don't talk about the guys that are going to go in the 3rd or 4th or 5th round as often. And I think as people got to deeper into the draft and started analyzing the tape of some guys that are not going to go in the 1st or the 2nd round and aren't household names, that's when you start to get to Trayvon Wesco and you saw the value in a guy like him. 6'3", 267 pounds, 35-inch arms. There's a lot to like here. Ran a 4.89 at the combine. In today's NFL, where mismatches are all the rage and tight ends have become chess pieces in glorified, bigger-bodied wideouts, Trayvon Wesco jumped on the NFL radar late as a dual-threat tight end that showed the ability to catch the football in his senior season to go along with his tenacious blocking at nearly 270 pounds. While he won't wow you with his speed, and he is fast enough to threaten NFL defenses, all the while getting his assignment done in the run game. Today's NFL and the ability of tight ends to block, it's such a rarity. Some guys are just getting in the way now, and you're not asking as much as of the tight ends today in the league because they don't do it a ton in college. A lot of these guys are removed from the line. They're H-backs. They're move pieces. They're not guys that are attached to the line as an inline traditional wide tight end, but instead flexed out as a detached tight end as a U, and they're moved around. And so they're not blocking a ton. And so when they get to the NFL level, their fundamentals are all jacked, and they're not really that adept at blocking. And so you ask them to do it. They're not very good, but you try to get by with it. And then generally you have to divulge a roster spot to just a blocking tight end. Well, what happens when you're able to find a guy that can catch it, run, do a lot of that stuff, but still also block all in one body? It saves you a roster spot. And so it also takes away the predictability of your offense. When you see the blocking tight end come in the game, okay, most likely they're going to run it. It's probably an 80-90% clip that they're going to run it because he's in the game. They're not throwing it to him. So you can then, as a defense, react to, hey, let's sell out for the run, or let's not have to worry about this guy catching the football, because even if he does catch it, even if they throw it to him, he's not running very far because he's not very fast, because he's a 275-pound, slug of a tight end that can't move very fast. Well, when you get guys like Trayvon Wesco that is faster, I think he plays faster than 4.89. That doesn't, you're not wowed by his speed, but he can move. He can get up the field and hurt you as a vertical threat if you're not careful. But where he's going to make his mark initially is blocking. The guy can block. And with you adding L.Bell to the mix, you need tight ends that can block. Sure, you had guys on your roster that you probably felt confident could get the job done as blockers, but could they also hurt that team as well in the pass game? Maybe not. Maybe Tomlinson was a guy that you liked as a blocker, but not as much as a pass catcher. Now a guy like Trayvon Wesco comes in, gives you a little bit of both, and gives you a little bit more in the pass game, but still gives you that plus blocking that you need to be an effective offense. So this is a really good pick here. And let's take tight end off the needs list for the Jets as Trayvon Wesco takes care of that need for them. I think he rose up boards late teams weren't really paying attention. But the more you watch tape, and you couldn't ignore, there were so many talented offensive players coming from West Virginia, whether you're talking about the quarterback Will Greer, you're talking about Yadni Kajust, their left tackle, or you're talking about Gary Jennings, their wide receiver, or David Sills, the other wide receiver. There were too many guys that were draftable prospects where you were watching tape that you had to run into Trayvon Wesco. You couldn't ignore him, and you probably said, damn, who's this guy? He looks pretty damn good. And so I think people ran into him indirectly, and the Jets may have been one of them, and they got themselves a really good football player. I comp him to Jordan Thomas, a guy that was late to the tight end scene, coming out of Mississippi State. He went to a JUCO in Mississippi, was a wide receiver, was a quarterback. He was some of everything. They move him over to tight end when he gets to the NFL, and he's still learning the position, but he looks like the guy that's going to be penciled in as the starter for the Texans this year at around 275, 280 pounds, a bigger tight end, but he can move. And I see Trayvon Wesco being a lot of the same. A big tight end that can move and catch the football, but also block in the run game. And so really like this pick because there are not enough of these guys in the league, and you may have gotten a guy that's a dual threat that can do a little bit of both. And at the tight end position, always try to find you a guy that can do both. And I think you did that here. To pair with Chris Herndon, who was outstanding as a pass catcher last year, you could have a nasty 1-2 punch here at the tight end position. Your own New England Patriots style 1-2 punch at the tight end position with Herndon and Wesco here in the 4th round, 121st pick overall. Tight end out of West Virginia, Trayvon Wesco for me is so the next pick in the draft for the Jets, 5th round, 157th selection overall, linebacker out of Minnesota, Blake Cashman is the pick. So Blake Cashman was one of the guys that I thought really helped himself during the combine. That's when he got on my radar. I had no idea who Blake Cashman was prior to the combine. He goes out, runs a 4.5, jumps like a 35 or 36, 37-inch vert, and all of a sudden I was like, whoa, who's this guy? And so turned on the tape, saw a guy that was very athletic. The tape definitely matched what he performed at the combine. And so that kind of solidified in a very weak linebacker class that this is a guy that you could take and feel good about in the mid to late rounds. And so here you are, 5th round, getting yourself what I deem to be a core special teamer, 1, but 2, a guy that ultimately I think is going to see the field because he's too athletically gifted and too talented not to find his way onto the football field. And I actually think that at Minnesota, they didn't necessarily tap into all of his athletic gifts. And so I think they could have exploited his athleticism even more so than they did. They dropped him into coverage a ton at Minnesota. And so only 1 year of production. And that's the only thing that worries me with him is he a 1-year wonder? Is he a guy, but you're taking him in the 5th round, so it's not like you're taking a 3rd round flyer on a guy that was a 1-year wonder. You're taking a 5th round flyer, and that changes things. So I like this pick here in the 5th round. One of the players who benefited most from the postseason workouts was Minnesota linebacker Blake Cashman. Running a 4.5 with a 37.5-inch vert confirmed the speed and explosiveness that flashed on tape. Though he dropped a ton for the Golden Gophers in coverage, his speed and dynamic ability to get to the into the backfield and get to the ball carrier could be unleashed at the next level. Once again, 1 year of true production. Guy had over 100 tackles in 2018, and prior to that, the highest output that he had was like 43 tackles. So you're talking about a guy that went from little to no production to an explosion of production in 2018. I like this guy a lot, and I think that they dropped him into coverage way too often. I thought that they didn't allow him to be as aggressive around the line of scrimmage as I thought he could have been. And he still ended up with like 15.5 tackles for loss. I think this is a guy that could have easily had many more plays at or around the line of scrimmage if they would have turned him loose instead of dropping him so much. I'd like to see him blitz more. I mean, with that kind of speed. And I don't know. Maybe they know, and they've seen him in practice not blitz very well, but I'd like to see them turn him loose because there were plays where I watched him on a 4th down, team going for it. He knifes into the backfield, untouched, tackle for loss, turnover on downs. He's got that kind of ability. You turn this guy free, you send some pressure, and he's the free hitter. He can get to the quarterback. He can speed up the process of the quarterback, force him into a mistake. I think that there's some really neat things you could probably do with this kind of speed at the next level. So initially, he's going to start off as a guy that helps you on specials. He's going to make, as a 5th round pick, I'm telling you, he's going to make your football team. He's too gifted of a football player to not. But he's going to make it as a special teams guy. And eventually, he's going to creep into the lineup. Not necessarily as a starter, but he's going to get more and more reps. There will be some sub packages where he's on the field because of his speed and his ability to drop into coverage. He's going to be a guy that I think is going to eventually get on the field, and the Jets are going to try to get some usage out of him. And it wouldn't shock me if it happened in his rookie season. Here in the 5th round, 157th pick. And let's take linebacker off the board, as that was a late need for me in this draft for the Jets. 157th selection overall. Linebacker out of Minnesota, Blake Cashman for me is... And I see my comp for Blake Cashman is Jordan Hicks, a guy that was with the Philadelphia Eagles, drafted out of Texas by the Eagles, burst onto the NFL landscape with a monster rookie season, then got injured, and then got injured again, and then he seemed like he could never really stay healthy. But when he's healthy, he's a force on the football field, can make plays on the football, can get into the backfield, tackling machine. I think that there's a lot of similarities between Blake Cashman and Jordan Hicks. And so I think that it's not going to be long before Blake Cashman has an impact on the football field, I think, for the New York Jets. As we go to the 6th round, final pick of this Jets draft, 196th overall. Defensive back out of Rutgers, Blasan Austin is the pick. So let's take cornerback off the needs board here as the Jets take Bless Austin out of Rutgers. And this is this is one of those guys that you root for. This is a feel-good story if this pans out. I've seen this come to fruition many a times where it doesn't work. And so I'm very skeptical about this. But I've long said, and I've said it throughout this process numerous times. And if you go back and you've watched any of my older videos, I've said it a million times there as well, and I'm going to continue to say it because I believe this, that in the 6th, in the 7th round, in these later rounds, that's when you take the flyer on a height, weight, speed guy, or a guy that's converting from a different position that doesn't know what he's doing, but he's raw and he's got a bunch of athleticism, or a guy that's got an injury-plagued past that you understand that he may never be the guy that he once was, but you know if he ever gets back to that guy, there's something there. Or the guy with the checkered past that gets in trouble and has a really bad off-the-field rap sheet, but the guy's uber talented. This is the time to take that guy in the 6th round, in the 7th round. These are the times when you spend picks on these guys, because if it doesn't work, it's a 6th or 7th round pick. You're not really all that upset. If it works, you get true value here. You get to say, wow, look at what we unearthed here. Look at what we uncovered in the later rounds. We knew that this guy was capable. We didn't know what to expect, and look what we got. So here's a situation of that, and I'm rooting for him. You know, when a guy goes through what he's went through with the injuries, you want to see him come out on the other side, like a Thomas Davis with the 3 ACL tears in Carolina, and then look at all the production he's had since tearing his ACL multiple times. You're hoping that this guy can come back from all the knee injuries and be the guy that he once was. But right now you're chasing a ghost if you're the Jets. 6'1", 198 pounds. He recently performed at a pro day for Rutgers, ran a 4.65 and a 35-inch vert with a 10.3 broad. These are all numbers that are solid. The 4.65 concerns you, but he's not at 100%. And he even said it himself. I'm not near 100% yet, but I will be come training camp time. And I'm out here showing people what I've gotten to in terms of the point where I'm at right now. And I'm running a 4.65 and I'm not healthy now. You know that this is more like a 4.55 or a 4.49 or 4.52. So he was just out there trying to show people I'm healthy enough to move. And if you take me, you're not going to regret it, essentially. So I don't even really look at the 4.65 as a legitimate time for him. When you watch him on tape, and the part about him and analyzing him and assessing his tape is you had to go back to 2016. You had to go back to 2017 to watch tape on this guy because there was nothing from 2018. He played in the first game of the season, and early on in that game, he re-aggravates his torn ACL from 2017. So let's get to his assessment quickly. A long, active cornerback with all the tools to make an NFL roster and be a contributor. Bless Austin landed on the NFL radar as a sophomore in 2016 with 4 interceptions and 14 pass breakups. But a torn ACL 4 games into 2017 and a re-aggravation of his knee injury the first game back in 2018 leaves any team who drafts him searching for the ghost of Bless Austin of 2016. But if they catch him, it could turn into a jackpot here in 2019. So essentially, you're chasing the ghost of 2016 from Bless Austin. Really is what you're doing. If you can get that guy to show back up and stay healthy, then you have something. Because I went back and watched him in 2016 versus Ohio State. He was impressive. Now he didn't look back for the football, which irks me. And you know I'm an LLCer, but he was always there. He was there. He was a guy that contested around the line of scrimmage. He used his length to his advantage there to disrupt the timing of the route. He usually stays in phase. He's right there. Again, I'd like to see him look back for the football more often, but I think he's a guy that has something to him. He's got ball skills. I talked about the 4 picks in 2016. He had a pick in 2015. He had a pick in 2017 before the injury. So this is a guy, and in 2018, he re-aggravated the knee doing what? Picking a pass off. So, and came down on it wrong. So this is a guy that has ball skills. So there's a lot to like here. He's got 32-inch arms, so he's got some length to go with that 6'1" frame. I think he could put a little bit more weight on that frame, maybe get to 200, 205 pounds, but that's nor here nor there. Bottom line is he's got an NFL cornerback frame, and he's got the ability to stay in phase and be involved in the play, but you're going back to 2016, you're going back to 2017 to assess this man's tape. I mean, you're talking about a guy that over the last 2 years has played a combined 5 games. 5 games in 2 years. Like, you don't really know what you're getting here. And although I see talent, you don't really know what you're going to get with Bless Austin. But I like the fact that he's getting an opportunity. When he was healthy, my comp for him was Kevin Johnson, a first-round pick of the Houston Texans out of Wake Forest. That really, injuries got him in Houston, and he was inconsistent. The injuries pretty much spelled doom for him in Houston. He's since moved on. He's now in Denver with the Broncos, looking for a new lease on life there. We'll see how that goes. I think he's in Denver, if I'm not mistaken. He's somewhere. No, he's in Buffalo. He's in Buffalo looking for a new lease on life with the Bills. And we'll see how that goes for him. But another guy with some talent and some length that couldn't stay healthy. Bless Austin falls right into that category. We're hoping that his injury history and past is behind him, and he can create a new legacy for himself as a cornerback in the NFL. But he's getting an opportunity. That's all he could ask for. That's all he wanted was a chance. And a team in the 6th round in the New York Jets took an opportunity and a chance on him. Now he's got to make good on this opportunity. And really, a lot of it is out of his control with the health situation, but he's got to stay healthy or else he won't make this football team and he won't get to realize his NFL dream. But like I said, I've seen this play out many times, and generally it doesn't end well. So I'm a little skeptical here. In the 6th round, 196th pick overall, defensive back out of Rutgers, Bless Austin for me is so you look at the Jets draft, and for me, I would have liked to have seen them draft a wide receiver. Don't think they have enough at receiver, but if Robbie Anderson is Robbie Anderson of 2017, if Jamison Crowder is Jamison Crowder of 2017, if you get Quincy Enunwa, who I was talking about earlier, and I couldn't think of his name. If Quincy Enunwa is Quincy, he just has to be Quincy Enunwa. If he's who he is and always has been, then maybe you have enough. You couple that with Chris Herndon and his production, and you're hoping to get something out of Trayvon Wesco. L. Bell is a glorified wide receiver when you throw it to him. So you may have enough when it's all said and done. You know, I thought that you could have also addressed the running back position, but I guess if you're okay with the guys that you have on your roster, and if L. Bell is healthy, then you should be just fine at running back. But if he is to get hurt, I don't necessarily love what you have behind him. But we'll see. You know, it is what it is. Bottom line is, this was a solid draft by the Jets. You know, obviously, some of the guys you took at the back end of this draft, I don't know what you're expecting out of them. Wesco is a guy that I think is plug and play. You're expecting him to come in and contribute right away. Blake Cashman is a guy that's probably going to start out on specials, but eventually I think he's going to find your lineup. And then obviously Bless Austin is a guy that I don't think there are any expectations for him. You're just going to give him an opportunity and see what happens. If he's able to pan out, great. If not, you just move forward with what you have. I don't think you have enough at corner, but we'll see. Obviously, the crown jewel of the draft is Quinnen Williams. You expect him to come in and dominate. So do I, as do many. And then Chuma Udoga is a guy that is really intriguing because if he pans out, you got yourself a legitimate tackle for the foreseeable future. And edge rusher was one of my biggest needs. It was my biggest need, as a matter of fact. And you addressed that with tremendous value in the third round. Can you get this guy to play the kind of football he played in 2018 is the question. If you can, then you got yourself a steal in the third round with Jakai Polite. So all that being said, the guy that made this all happen, not here. We'll see who takes his spot in New York with the Jets. But nonetheless, here's the grade that the Jets got for the 2019 NFL Draft. So that's going to do it for the New York Jets in their 2019 NFL Draft wrap-up. If you haven't already done so, what are you waiting on? Subscribe to the Louie Tee Network for more great content. Also, check out the Louie Tee Network podcast available on Stitcher, Google Music Play, Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, Spotify, and, of course, the website, LouieTeeNetwork.net. I'm your man, Louie T, signing off. Remember, if it's not your man T, it's not the best NFL coverage it could be. Until next time, I'm your man, Louie T. Have a good one.
Louie Tee Network.